Who made the sauce?
I made the sauce.
Who got the sauce?
I got the sauce.
What's in the sauce?
I am the sauce.
Okay.
Hello and what is up, my friends? It's Bob here, and tonight we are going to take a look at the most recent release of the Onesauce. If you're new to the Legends Ultimate, or you're not familiar with the Onesauce, it is a pre-configured front end that you can load onto the arcade cabinet simply by plugging a USB drive into the cabinet. This will add more than 20,000 arcade, console, handheld, and computer games, and a really nifty interface to find your games. In this video, we're going to go over some of the methods to download the Onesauce, how to install the software, and then a brief demo of the updated version and a few games that you can run with this thing. Speaking of USB drives, in the description below, I'm going to list out a few of the drives that I've personally tested and that I know work well with the Legends Ultimate, though there are many others that also will work. I have released several videos over the years for both the Legends Ultimate and for the Onesauce. The last being about a year ago with the last major update to the Onesauce. The reason I'm making this video is because a new version of the Onesauce has come out that actually coincides with a big firmware update that AddGames put out that unfortunately caused a lot of headaches for users. They put out a couple of good ones, like 5.68 I think was the last major update, which allowed you to launch several things without having to log in, and actually had some good changes. And then 5.7 came out and caused a ton of issues for some of these front-end system. CoinOps, AddOn X, Onesauce all had issues. This update specifically works with 5.7. Though if you've not upgraded, I would stay on 5.68 or even further back if you have a preferable firmware version. Okay, now let's take a look at the ways to obtain the Onesauce. To start with, this is the most recent post on the Facebook group on the different ways to obtain this. I'm just going to go through your options. You can get this directly from archive.org if you click on this link. This is for the full build. Usually you can download a zipped version or use the torrent. When I tried the torrent, it actually failed, but I think it takes some time for it to propagate and become available. There are some things I'd recommend if you do download it here. Make sure to use a download manager. If your download fails for any reason and you're not using a download manager, you start usually from scratch and it takes forever. Yeah, so that's one option. You can also download it using the FTP link, and I'm actually going to go in more depth in this in just a moment. I'm going to show you actually how to do this after installing FileZilla. And then you can also use the Google Drive, and there is a link down here to use a piece of software that is supposed to increase the download speed. I haven't actually used this method, so I'm not going to go into too much depth on it, but one nice thing is they have it available where you can download everything in smaller 2 GB zip files instead of the full 1 TB all at once. So that's a good way where you can get this piecemeal instead of having to download 1 full terabyte altogether. And then the FTP drive, we're going to jump into FileZilla, and I will show you how to use this. Okay, for the FTP, click on this link, which will take you to a Google Drive. Download these instructions. I'm also going to walk you through this, but here is the instructions. I'm going to just show you this in real time rather than read all this out, as I've already done it, and there's just a couple of things I'll mention along the way. It's really not as complex as it looks. Okay, so here is FileZilla. I've had it installed. I'm not going to walk you through step-by-step downloading and installing FileZilla. If you can't figure out how to do that, you probably should not be messing with the Onesauce, just to be honest. I've already done this, but I'm going to show you how to basically do like a new download. Pretty simple stuff here. There's a host name, username, password. The host name is in that PDF file that got posted. It's home.eklov.net. Username is at the bottom of that PDF document. There's a bunch of them listed there. I just randomly grabbed one and it worked for me. If you ever have an issue and it does not work, pick a different one. It's that username password is probably used up at that time. So I typed in username, password. Port number, again, is from that PDF file. It's 2121. Okay, now per the PDF, you want to come to the transfer menu, make sure preserve timestamp of transferred files is enabled. Then we can connect, click quick connect. Hopefully that username and password is not being used by anyone else. And you can see I got connected here. The way to read this, left side is your computer, right side is the FTP that you're connecting to. We're going to navigate to the full build here, and this is where we've got some options. You can download either a zipped version, either in one total file or 473 split files, or you can download a unzipped full build. I used the unzipped full build, and the reasoning for that is I am a little bit limited on hard drive space. I had like 1 terabyte free on my main drive on my computer, and then I had an external drive of 1 terabyte. Now this build as is requires a 2 terabyte drive, just barely. So I downloaded the 1 terabyte drive and I culled a few games that I didn't care about to where it would fit onto my external drive. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a few minutes. But if you want to do that, the easiest way to navigate is using the unzipped build, as it's difficult to delete stuff while it's zipped, and you're not going to have enough space to export and everything. If you have huge 4 terabyte SSD or NVMe, go ahead and download zipped. It'll be a smaller and quicker download. But if you're limited on space, I would recommend the unzipped file. Now, you'll see on the left here, I've already downloaded this. So this is what it looked like when it was finished. I'm going to show you how to start this on a new download. Basically, you select where you want to download to, and let's just rename this new download. And this is the file folder that's open, and then I'm going to tell this to download. And it's going to take a little while, but you'll see it's already built that unzipped full build folder there, and you can see it's downloading away. Couple of things to mention about FileZilla. There is a way that you can make this go a little bit faster if you go to settings and you go down to the transfers menu. If you look at the PDF, they actually recommend bumping this up to 10. And you can try that. I actually found more success around 5. Technically, it will go faster, I think, at 10. But I want you to look at this failed transfers down here. Right now, I don't have any failed transfers at 5. I'll probably get some over time, but if I bump this up to 10, it is going to ping that server so fast that a decent number of them are going to fail. And it's going to depend on, like, I think the server you're connected to. It's going to depend on your connection. There's a lot of factors that go into this, but when I set it to 10, I was seeing a huge number of failed transfers with the server I was running. And what you then have to do is come down here, right-click, reset, and request all, which was kind of annoying. I almost did, like, babysit my download, whereas when I set it to 5, I didn't get any fails at all. I'm noticing I'm not getting any fails right now, so I wonder if the server I was connected to maybe just did not have enough bandwidth available or something. But right now, I'm not getting any. If you do see a bunch of failed transfers here start popping up, all you have to do is right-click, reset, and requeue. It'll put them back into the queue. If you put it low enough that you're not getting fails, you can like leave it overnight and not worry about it. And when you come back, it should be all ready to go. But if you leave it overnight and you come back and you see that there's anything that failed, do come in here and reset and requeue those items, and it should continue the download of those items. Okay, and here is what the finished download looks like. You'll notice a whole bunch of folders here. I'm going to just quickly explain kind of what you need to do. Out of the box, if you're running a 1.0 cabinet, you want to copy over these folders to your external drive if you did not download this directly to the external drive. If you are running a different cabinet, if you're running, let's say, 1.1, 1.2, core, puck, that's what this conversion file is here. So you would copy over the content folder, basically, and then the background and screensavers, and then you would come in here and you would export whichever one's appropriate for your device. So by default, this works with 1.0, but if you're running like a 1.1 or a 1.2, you'd come in here, and you would then drag these items over on top of your drive. Same thing for the Core Max or the Puck. I've actually got a Gamer Pro, and I have been able to successfully install this on an external drive, and then using this controller conversion file, I've dropped the Puck files over, and it worked on my Gamer Pro. And then when I was done and I wanted to go back to my legendsUltimate, I used this 1.0 zip, copied it over, and it worked. So it is possible to kind of port one drive between multiple devices. I haven't tried on a Core Max or on the newer systems, but I was able to swap back and forth pretty independently and use this on both devices. I mentioned earlier that I had a limited drive space. I've only got a 1 terabyte external drive, and this technically requires a 2 terabyte. It's just over 1 terabyte. I think it's like 986 gigabytes, which will not fit typically on a 1 terabyte drive when they convert the MBs to MBs and all that. There are some ways you can shrink this down to easily fit on a 1 terabyte drive, and I almost wish someone kind of came behind and culled a few things and made a 1 terabyte version, but it's not hard to make your own. To start with, there's a huge screensaver folder here. I think there's like 30 gigs of video files here. And I mean, someone put a lot of work into this, and good on them for that, but I have never used the screensaver or the jukebox functionality that works with these files. So I did not copy this folder over, and you won't lose any functionality by not copying it over if you're not using that jukebox or the screensaver. So that's one thing where you can cut a little bit of space. Another thing I could mention is there are a ton of games on here that just don't really make sense on a arcade cabinet. And I'm using a piece of software called Space Sniffer to visualize the space on my hard drive here. Let's just go, you can ignore all my pirated movies. Here's the Legends folder. And actually, let's go one level deeper. Okay. So you can see PlayStation games, Dreamcast games, Super Nintendo, Sony PSP, Sega CD. You can see what systems are taking the most space. And I've already cut this down, so this is probably not going to look like if you do this yourself. I already pulled out some games that were taking up a huge amount of space to get this running. You can also see here is that screensaver file. Like, it's taking up a pretty big chunk of the overall space on that drive. The Daphne game, things like Dragon's Lair, like those old VHS CD file games, they take up a huge amount of space. There's also some that are based on like more recent properties. There's like a Sucker Punch one, Princess Mononoke, cool stuff, but they take up a huge amount of space. Scummy VM, I deleted a few things here. These are PC point and click adventure games for the most part that just don't make sense to me playing on an arcade cabinet. So there's a lot of stuff you could come in here and clean up. Like I went into the PlayStation and deleted like a ton of Resident Evil, Final Fantasy, like multi-disc RPG games that I'm just never going to sit in front of my arcade cabinet and play. And I probably deleted about 50 games out of the, 25,000 games in this pack, and was pretty easily able to make this fit on 1 terabyte when I excluded the screensaver files. So if you are trying to make this fit, it doesn't take that much effort. You can come in here. If you're using something like a Space Sniffer, this is a good way to visualize at a glance how big everything is on the drive. And you can come in here and like, okay, I'm never going to play Fear Effect on my arcade cabinet. You could simply come in here and delete it, or you could right-click and open up the folder. And here are all of the PlayStation 1 games, and you could come in here, sort this by size, and delete, them this way as well. But I just find if you've never used Space Sniffer, it's a free piece of software. It's just a great way to visualize the space on a drive or in a specific folder and to clean it up. So by doing that, you can pretty easily fit this on a 1 terabyte drive. Now you've drag and drop files over to your drive, you plug it into your system, you go to the BYOG menu, you go down to add-ons, and then you'll have a couple of options here. Typically, you're going to see something like a performance mode and a no boost mode. The performance mode is basically like an overclocking for the system's CPU. You'll get a little bit better performance in some games. Sometimes you'll run into some stability issues and crashing. It really is just kind of the luck of the draw on your silicone on your chip. I found some issues with the Gamer Pro running on the performance mode. If you run into any issues, I would do the no boost version instead. That initial load can also take a while, depending on if you're using an SSD or hard drive. Like I said, I'll have some drives down in the description below if you're interested in drives that have worked for me. After that first load, though, it should be a bit quicker in the future. And I'm just going to talk over some footage showing some of the new changes, the new interface, demoing a couple of games. I want to show off first the updated themes. There are a ton of themes that have been added since the last update that I've seen. You have your default, like your Luna, but then there's also a lot of retro themes in here. There's like an 80s theme. There's one that makes it look like coin ops. There's 2 versions of Luna here. There's just a ton of variety to the themes now, and they do change up the look and the feel. I noticed some of these are a little bit more perfect than others, like the coin ops one I noticed. When you're scrolling through games and you get to like where you can read the description of the game, the description pops up in front of the game names, and I don't love that. So some of these are a little bit cleaner than others, but there is a ton of variety here and new stuff in the themes. And there are a ton of other changes beyond the themes. This build incorporates fixes and improvements that have occurred since the last full release. This includes making it work on 5.7, which was broken for a time. This also has updated squash files that incorporate the latest versions of RetroFE and improvements to bit LCD support. I don't have a bit LCD to be able to test this out, but I hear it's better. They've improved the art for thousands of the games in the interface. They've shrunk down and reformatted while maintaining quality. There's a bunch of fixes for the bezels when you're running different games. There are also some new games that have been added. Not a whole lot, like on the arcade side of things, but they've added in a few of the console games and computer games. Specifically, there's a pretty big Famicom pack, about 425 new Famicom games. Those are Japanese Nintendo games, basically. NEC Super Graphics, NEC PC Engine, NEC PC 8801 games have been added, and a complete rebuild of the existing Sega CD build. And that's in addition to all the existing systems, which include nearly every arcade game from, 1970 to the early 2000s. It includes nearly every home console from the Atari to the Dreamcast. It includes nearly every portable system from the original Game Boy through the PSP. Many classic computer games, Scummy VM games, Daphne games, the list goes on and on. Now, one thing I'll mention as I just cycle through a few games here is that the Onesauce, it has a ton of games, but it doesn't mean that everything is going to work perfectly. The Onesauce team seems to have a bit of a kitchen sink philosophy. I've mentioned this before, and they basically include every system that will boot, and then every game for that system. For example, someone determines that Naomi games are running, so someone drops every single Naomi game into the Onesauce. Not all of those games work perfectly. Some of them may need some additional configuration. Sometimes, you're going to have some FPS drops. You may need to go into the settings, either the MAME settings or the RetroArch or the emulator settings. Maybe add some frame skip, lower the resolution, do something to make it run a little better. And in some cases, you're just not going to be able to make it run better. There's certain games that I could not get either to launch or to run at a performance level that I considered acceptable. I would say about 80 to 90% of the games I try run acceptably out of the box or require minimal configuration. I also want to mention that sometimes you're going to boot up a game and the controls are not going to be configured perfectly. This is generally caused because there are so many different arcade and controller configurations, and the Onesauce mostly uses a one-size-fits-all setup. So you might boot up Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. All of the buttons are probably configured, but may not be in the exact configuration that matches the original arcade deck. You can go into the settings and either configure that entire system or that specific game to your preference. Again, most of these games you can boot up and control reasonably well, but if you want it to be perfect, especially on like a 6-button fighting game, you may need to go in and customize those controls. That kind of is the trade-off with the Onesauce. They definitely have a ton more games, but there is going to be a bit more setup and a little bit more work on your part on some of these games. You could go to CoinOps X, and I think they have a pretty comparable arcade list of games, but way fewer console games, and there's just a ton of games on the Onesauce that just will not run on CoinOps. So they have a little bit more curated list of games and probably a little bit, I would say, a little bit better configuration as far as like performance and controls go. But if you want access to games like NFL Blitz, you want access to games like Soul Calibur and Nintendo 64, PlayStation, Dreamcast, Naomi. There's a lot of these that will not run on CoinOps at all. I know there's also a new system. I haven't poked around much with it called Unchained. My understanding is it's pretty comparable and what will play to the Onesauce, but it does require a lot more configuration on your part. If I do poke around with that later, I will try to do a video on it, but I'm really happy with the Onesauce, so I haven't really bothered to go into those other systems yet. But that's kind of the difference right now. Onesauce is kind of a, here is everything in the kitchen sink, but you might need to be a power user and go in and change a few things in MAME or RetroArch to make it to your liking. CoinOps is a lot more plug and play, and here are 2,000 or so arcade games that all run pretty well. And then the Unchained, you have to go in and do almost all the configuration and set up yourself, add the art and everything. So those are your big three options if you're looking for a big front end with a ton of games built in. So in conclusion, this is my favorite way to add games to the Legends Ultimate Arcade. You can play a ton of newer arcade games, Dreamcast games, PlayStation games, PC games, homebrew games that you could not play directly on the cabinet or with the CoinOps X, AddOn X. This is the only method that I'm aware of to get most of these working. Now, this video mostly covered just the major changed items in this recent update. If you want to go back, I have a couple of previous videos in a playlist below that go to more detail on previous versions, and you can see more games running. But at the end of the day, I'm still very happy with my Legends Ultimate, and the Onesauce has just gotten better over time. And if you do have any issues, I really highly recommend checking out the Onesauce's Facebook page. They are an amazing group of individuals who spend a huge amount of time getting this thing working and offering help and support to people. And if you have some skill or some time to offer, drop a line to them. They're always looking for new testers, more people to help build this thing. So join if you want. If you need some assistance, they are a very helpful group of people. So that's it. I'm going to end it there. I do want to thank everyone for watching tonight. If you've enjoyed this video, I have a ton of coverage on the Legends Ultimate and other gaming devices like the Steam Deck. I'm big into virtual reality. I cover everything from new AAA releases to retro classics and everything in between. And if that sounds like something you might want to see, please do like, subscribe, drop me a comment with your thoughts, and just thank you once again, and have a good night, everybody.